Shocking truth, homeless man stuns critics, reveals his epic race legend status at midnight. The clock struck 12 at the dingy park, draping everything in a cloak of eerie stillness. The usual sounds of the city faded away, only to be replaced by a shiver of anticipation in the air. It was then that everyone turned to see him. A figure emerged from the shadows, scruffy and worn, but his eyes held a fire that seemed almost otherworldly. His name? Eli. Eyes wide, mouths agape, the handful of nighttime wanderers couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves. Eli wasn't just an ordinary man. He was a legend. Claims had danced through the city for years, weaving tales of his astounding speed. Midnight runner? Sure. Someone scoffed initially, but when Eli sprinted past without a sound, only the wind in his wake, jaws dropped. The flickering streetlights barely caught the rapid flicker of his feet. It was mesmerizing, surreal. Beth, a woman perched on a park bench, clutched her chest. Did you see that? Yes, like the wind. Murmurs erupted among the onlookers, confusion tangled with awe. Some speculated, what if he was a ghost? Or maybe a long-lost athlete, discarded by society. Knots formed in throats as they pondered what darkness could have led him here, under these fading stars. As Eli paused, breathless, he turned to face them. No words left his lips, yet the silence screamed louder than a yell. The crowd leaned forward, a single heartbeat filling the gap of uncertainty. The atmosphere thickened with questions. Who was he really? What had he done to claim the title of legend? It was the midnight magic that hung heavy in the air, and they were all spellbound. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Eli's gaze swept over the crowd, and with every fleeting glance, chills raced down spines. He lifted his hands, palms open wide as if offering secrets locked within. But before anyone could step closer, a piercing scream echoed from the trees. Suddenly, everything shattered. Eli narrowed his eyes, shifting from legendary figure to startled soul, glancing back into the darkness. Were they alone? What lurked just beyond the light? The energy shifted as the crowd gasped, eyes darted to the shadows. Fear mingled with excitement. Eli took a step back, the air crackling around him. Was that the moment of truth everyone had been waiting for? Just what was hiding there? And why did it feel like that something was watching them all? Just then, from the darkness, a figure emerged, silhouetted against the pale moonlight. A woman, clad in a tattered coat, stepped forward, her eyes darting nervously. Please. You have to help me. She cried, her voice trembling. Eli's instincts kicked in. Trust was a luxury he no longer had, but something about her desperation struck a chord. He instinctively took a step forward, fingers clenching at his sides. What is going on? He asked, the urgency in his tone slicing through the tension. The crowd parted, the whispers softening to anxious murmurs. All eyes were glued to the woman. They're coming for me. She gasped, her breath coming in short, ragged bursts. I saw something. In the alley. Something. Beth echoed, stepping cautiously from the bench, her anxious curiosity drawing her closer. The woman nodded frantically, her face pale and etched with fear. I thought I was imagining it. But when I ran the shadows, they were alive. They chased me. Eli felt an electric charge in the air. Unanswered questions pricked at his mind like needles. What had this woman seen? And what did it all mean? As if answering his unspoken fears, the wind shifted, bringing with it a sound that made the crowd collectively shudder. A low growl rolled through the trees, a timbre deeper than any wild animal. It echoed, rumbling like thunder. A sick feeling pressed down on Eli's chest. He glanced around, longing to tell them to run, to escape while they still could. But instead, he found himself inching closer to the woman. What did it look like? His voice came out softer than he intended. Tall, dark, with glowing eyes. She whimpered, shaking as she spoke. The memory seemed to reach into her soul, pulling up something buried deep and terrifying. The crowd was captivated, torn between fear and fascination. Eli felt their pulse quicken in sync with his own. Every inch of his being screamed for action. We need to get out of here. He turned sideways, eyes scanning the surrounding darkness for any signs of movement. Suddenly, a rustle came from behind a nearby tree, a shadow flickered across the ground like a phantom. There! Someone shouted, pointing. Panic ignited, and the gathered crowd erupted into chaos. Eli's muscles tensed, ready to sprint, but he hesitated. The desperation woven into the fabric of that woman's gaze anchored him. He couldn't leave her behind. Stay close. He shouted, gripping her hand tightly. The moment felt surreal, like time frozen in his racing heart, and then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A shape, impossibly fast, darting through the trees. Eli's heart pounded as he pulled the woman along, navigating the maddening sea of bodies trying to escape. Fear twisted into adrenaline, the race he had been told he could own. Here it was, fierce as ever, but this time, it wasn't just for him. Hurry! Beth's frantic yell cut through the air as shadows danced closer, more tangible than before. The panic surged again. It felt primal, ancestral, a reminder of survival, and then, just ahead, a light flickered from another part of the park. Could it be a way out? The idea sparked a surge of hope amid the impending dread. There! To the light! Eli shouted, guiding everyone toward it. But as they rushed forward, Eli stole one last glance back, and his breath caught. An unspeakable presence loomed among the trees. Glowing eyes stared back at him, burning with hunger, sending an icy chill down his spine. What had they unwittingly wandered into? As they plunged toward the light, the atmosphere crackled around them, laden with danger. Eli's heart raced, not just from running but from knowing that even in this fleeting moment of escape, something darker was waiting, ready to strike. The truth was close, but the shadows would not be easily cast away. What did they truly face in that park of midnight horrors? They barreled toward the light, each step echoing like a drumbeat of impending doom. Eli's lungs burned with every hurried breath, but he couldn't afford to think about exhaustion. The vague shape trailing behind them surged closer, a creeping darkness that gnawed at his resolve. Faster, everyone! He shouted, adrenaline flooding his veins, his grip on the woman tightening as her feet stumbled. The light flickered again, a trembling promise amidst the chaos. It was a small, broken lamppost, barely illuminating a narrow path forward. The dim glow caught Beth's terrified face, twisted in worry. What if it's a trap? She gasped, glancing back at the encroaching shadow, which moved with a fluidity that belied all natural behavior. Then we face it together. Eli barked, pushing against the tide of panic. Heart pounding like a hammer in his chest, he shone the light of his resolve on them. Please. The woman gasped. You don't understand, but Eli couldn't afford to linger on her words. With a firm tug, he pulled her closer, leading her toward the faint glow. The crowd collapsed against him, desperation igniting a new fervor in their speed. They were so close, yet the shadows twisted and snapped, as if forming a barrier, urging them back into the darkness. Without warning, the ground thudded beneath them, almost like a heartbeat. Eli froze. The noise came again, a far more primal sound. The growl harmonized with the frantic rhythm of their flight, as if driven by fangs and fury. It sent a shiver down his spine. What was it? Some beast stirred with hunger, darker than he had ever imagined. Come on! Beth called over her shoulder, the urgency propelling him forward again. They were almost there, a destination shimmering just beyond the smothering blackness, but the shadows rallied, a writhing mass of terror that lunged forward. Eli turned, ready to confront whatever threatened them. What he saw turned his stomach cold. The entity slipped between the trees with terrifying speed, its glowing eyes glinting like echoes of death. In that moment, clarity shattered the panic. Eli recalled the woman's words, a creature of shadows, with eyes that glowed like lanterns in the night, now standing in front of him. Feeling them bore into his soul, a rush of rage and sorrow surged within him. This thing was not just hunting. It was a predator, feeding off fear. Stay together. Eli bellowed, forcing the crowd to maintain their path toward the lampost's feeble glow. Don't look back. The woman next to him whimpered, her breath a frantic whistle. What if it wants me? She murmured, fear anchoring her feet. Then we won't let it take you, Eli vowed. Before he could think it through, he pushed forward, drawing the group into the thin halo of light. The shadows writhed at the edge, dark tendrils stretching as if testing their will to escape. Eli felt a flicker of hope. There, beyond the lamppost, the park continued a slight incline leading up to a street. The bitter taste of freedom lingered in the air, yet the shadows loomed and writhed behind them, thirsting for the panic that flooded the night. Every breath, every pulse of fear stoked their power. Suddenly, a scream pierced through the raw night air. It was not from their group, but a clear, piercing sound echoing through the trees. Gravity shifted in Eli's chest. What was that? He shouted, dread pooling in his gut. In that heartbeat pause, he noticed the crowd had faltered, brows furrowed, scanning the gathering dark just beyond the glow. What if we just keep running? Someone whispered, but the hesitance was palpable. He stepped forward, gaze on the green light ahead, urging his heart to quiet as adrenaline coursed through him. Just as he considered the distance, something lunged from the shadows, a dark figure, racing straight toward them, a blinding blur of claws and teeth. Run! Eli shouted, adrenaline breaking the silence, and they burst into motion again. But were they running toward salvation or straight into the maw of horror waiting for them just ahead? As the figure advanced, cold laughter echoed in the air, sending chills racing down Eli's spine. They had crossed into something far beyond mere shadows, and soon, they'd have to confront the truth behind the monstrous chase that had spiraled out of control. Were they truly escaping, or just delaying the inevitable? The night was about to reveal its darkest secret. Eli's breath came in harsh gasps, the panic-drenched air swirling around him. He refused to look back, pushing the woman further, forcing the group ahead. The growls reverberated closer now, sharp and hungry. Each footfall felt like a countdown, time running out as the darkness latched onto their heels. Stay with me. Don't break rank. Eli yelled, but his voice barely pierced the weight of despair that clung to them. Beth reached out, nails digging into Eli's arm. Eli, if we don't stop, no. He pulled her forward, his eyes darting to the flickering light ahead. The lamppost was a weak ember, but it was all they had. The shadows seemed to taunt them, weaving faster, hungry to claim their fears and set them free in the dark. Another scream sliced through the night, this time closer, more visceral. It wasn't just a sound, it was an invocation of horror, echoing through the trees, grasping at them with icy fingers. Eli's heart raced. Who's there? He shouted. His voice bounced back, swallowed by the gloom. The woman cried out again, her voice trembling, cracking beneath the weight of what chased them. It wants me, Eli. I can feel it. Focus. We get through this. We don't stop. It was all he could offer, but each step felt heavier as the shadows slunk closer. Deep breaths. Stay calm, he thought, even as dread clawed at his throat. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught a blinding flash, a glimpse of movement. Something darted through the shadows, quick and lethal, and suddenly the crowd surged forward, fueled by terror. Run! Eli shouted again, driving them ahead as he felt the temperature drop. A cacophony of soft thuds followed, echoing in close pursuit. His stomach churned with the knowledge that behind them, a predator stalked on the verge of devouring their collective fear. They approached the lamppost now, and for a split second, it illuminated a battered path lined with jagged stones. Eli felt light and shadow swell around them, creating a looming choice, the jagged road or to stand their ground against the darkness. Eli, the path. Beth cried out, urgency clawing at her voice. He recognized the twisted resolve in her eyes. The fight was still there, but something needed to give before it spiraled into chaos. Keep running. He commanded, the intensity of the moment reaching fever pitch. Yet, as they crossed under the lampost's weak cover, something swirled behind them, a rush of shadows that pooled and surged like liquid night. And then it lunged. Eli turned just in time to see the creature, a mass of darkness converging, eyes glowing with an unholy light. It was closer now, sleek and serpentine, and Eli felt his blood run cold. It wasn't just hunting anymore, it was playing that. He ripped his gaze away, forcing the group to move. Just beyond the lamppost, a side path disappeared into thicker brush. In there! He yelled, and they dove into the foliage, ducking low, hearts racing. Shadows ricocheted around them, screeching as the creature collided with the edge of the light, snarling in fury. Stop! We have to think. Someone whispered, and Eli felt the weight of their decision crush him. The woman clung to him, eyes wide with terror. What if it finds us? Eli felt the walls of panic closing in. We can't stop. We must keep moving. But doubt seeped into his veins. They were deep in the wilderness now, the trees looming like sentinels, and he feared they'd just driven themselves into a dead end, ripe for the taking. The howls echoed closer, an insistent promise that something was near, lurking beyond the cover of darkness. The creature was patient, waiting for them to falter, hungry for their despair. With hearts pounding, they pushed through the undergrowth, branches scratching at their skin like warnings, breaths mingling in the cold air. Eli couldn't shake the feeling they were walking into another trap, but could they find safety? With shadows reaching and the creature closing in, as fears grasped their throats, Eli had to decide what was worse, facing the beast head-on or succumbing to its intoxicating fear. They stumbled into a clearing, the ground uneven. The moonlight broke through the branches above, and Eli felt hope flicker. But the sound behind them was unmistakable, even as he concentrated on the path ahead. Then sudden silence fell. A fresh veneer of dread washed over him, and he almost didn't want to turn. But a low growl followed, resonating like thunder across the selection of trees. Eli, what's happening? Beth's voice quivered, filled with a haunting uncertainty, and then came the whispers. Join us, they beckoned, as the shadows wrapped around him, drawing closer. The creature was no longer alone, the woods whispered in unison, an unholy chorus of suffering and longing. Eli's mind raced. They weren't hunted, they were being summoned deeper into the dark, into something even more dangerous. Don't listen. Eli shouted, but doubt peppered his heartbeat. Were they about to find the edge of salvation, or would they tumble into a nightmarish twist that beckoned like a siren song? With a single turn of his head, Eli faced the void. Move! He cried, his voice shaking as they marched into the unknown. As the darkness reached desperately for them, Eli wondered if they were truly escaping or if the night had simply ensnared them in its cruel grasp. What fate awaited them in the depths of a darkness so complete? They plunged into the thick underbrush, branches whipping against their skin like the claws of the shadows behind them. It seemed absurd, this mad dash through a nightmare born of nightmare, driven by a primal instinct to survive. Eli's thoughts spiraled as fear enveloped them, and he barely registered their surroundings. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving through the forest like a vine wrapped tighter around each of them. Join us. It was a seductive promise, one that seeped into his mind, blurring the line between reality and the darkness pulling on their hearts. Keep moving. Eli barked, his voice sharp against the resonance of the siren calls. He had to be strong. He had to be the anchor that kept them from succumbing to despair, but with each step, doubt tugged at his resolve. The shadows danced, playing tricks on his mind, teasing glimpses of faces caught in an eternal promise of darkness. Eli stumbled over a hidden root, hitting the ground hard, and suddenly the forest felt even more suffocating. Eli! Beth cried out, her own footing nearly gone as she reached for him. The desperation in her voice sent a jolt through his body. "I'm fine, let us go." He ripped himself off the ground, his hands scraping against the damp earth, and pushed Beth back on her feet. They resumed their frenzied flight, the air thick with the stench of decay that seemed to seep from the trees. Ahead, the woods began to thin out, revealing a patch of brighter moonlight. Relief washed over Eli, urging him to sprint faster, but the shadows were relentless. A guttural sound echoed behind them, a shrill cry that sent fear ricocheting through the group, forcing them to run harder. "We need to split up." A man shouted, the panic clear in his voice. "We might lose it." Eli shot him a glance, heart racing. "No. We stick together." The need for unity felt explosive in the air, but the chaos was infectious. What would happen if they separated? Would that just make them easier prey? Before he could decide, the whispers swelled into a screaming cacophony, voices overlapping in the urgency of pleading. "Join us. Escape the darkness." The promise was sickeningly sweet, like honey laced with poison. "Hold your ground." Eli yelled, grasping Beth's wrist tight. An unfamiliar cold crept up his spine, displacing every ounce of warmth in his body. The creature was near. The shadows coiled around the clearing, a living entity folding upon itself, and then it charged, too swift for their eyes to catch. "Run!" he shouted, pushing Beth and the others away from the center, but their feet seemed glued in dread. In that moment of frantic movement, Eli glanced back as the beast surged forward, revealing elongated, glimmering teeth and eyes like black holes each containing the abyss. It lunged at them, darkness swallowing everything in its path. The ground quaked beneath them as the creature slammed forward, and Eli felt the earth shift, a reminder of their mortality. Heart pounding, he directed them to the edge of a slope. The bank rose steeply, leading down into a darkness that seemed to pulse, urging him to leap. "We can't go down there," someone shouted, but Eli sensed time slipping through their fingers. "We have to." Lights flickered in his mind, overlapping visions of safety, truth, and danger. "Listen. Trust me." He thrust himself against the edge, arms outstretched, urging them to follow. The whispers faded momentarily, and Eli's heart leaped as a strange, wavering light pulsed at the bottom of the slope. Whatever it was, it beckoned. Would it lead them to salvation, or would it be another trap? Then the beast's snarl erupted again, a sound that made Eli's very bones shiver. It was hungry, relentless. There was no choice anymore. "Jump!" he urged, and as they raced toward the precipice, the darkness clawed at their heels, shattering the moment's stillness. Would the light reveal an escape, or would it consume them just like the shadows looming on their backs? With hearts beating as one in sheer terror, they plunged into the unknown. What awaited them in the depths beneath the horrors of the night? The moment they hurtled into the void, Eli's heart felt like it would explode. The world above vanished in a flurry of darkness, the whispers now replacing the sounds of the forest with an eerie silence, as though the mouth of the abyss had swallowed them whole. Falling seemed to last forever until a jarring impact arrested their descent. Eli hit a damp bed of leaves and mud, a sharp pain lancing through his shoulder. He gasped, rolling to his side the instant he regained his breath. Around him, the others landed in a chaotic mix of cries and groans, voices blending into panicked murmurs. "Is everyone okay?" Eli croaked, forcing himself to his feet, muscles screaming in protest. Beth scrambled up next to him, her eyes wide, reflecting a fresh wave of fear. "What was that? Where are we?" The light, a weak flicker, hung in the air like a dying star, illuminating their surroundings just enough to make out jagged rocks and the contours of the dirt walls enclosing them. They stood in a low cavern, its mouth eerily shaped like a gaping maw, threatening to close off any escape. "Stay close," Eli whispered, but the dread of the creature still lurked in his mind. He could almost feel its breath against his neck as he turned, scanning the enclave for signs of movement. Shadows shifted at the edge of the light, and he almost believed he saw something watching from beyond. Another figure joined them, panting. Jake, one of the other hikers, appeared disoriented but intact. "What happened?" he gasped, his brows slick with sweat. "I thought I was done for." "Don't let your guard down," Eli shouted urgently. "We might not be safe yet." After a few tense moments, the group managed to regroup, hearts racing with adrenaline. Each one of them, except Eli, wore expressions of dawning realization mixed with unspoken horror. They had ventured far too deep, and now they were utterly alone in this darkness. "Do you think we can get out?" Beth's voice trembled, causing Eli's chest to tighten. He didn't have an answer, a pang of guilt striking him. "Maybe if we find another way," he suggested, though he had no idea how to navigate this maze. As the light flickered again, they noticed markings on the cave walls, scratches not unlike claw marks, and drawings sketched in a hurried hand that depicted fearsome creatures and twisted faces. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he realized the tales those markings could tell. Stories of people who had come here before, lost souls consumed by the whispers and darkness. "Perhaps," Jake began, peering closer at the illustrations, "these were it was a warning." "Or it was a way out," Eli said, feeling a spark of determination. He stepped back toward the light, examining it with fresh resolve. Behind it, a narrow passageway stretched deeper into the cavern. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled as cold air whispered against him. "We can explore." But before he could lead the way, an ear-splitting roar erupted from the shadows, reverberating off the walls. Something lurked just outside their finite respite, a wicked presence they couldn't yet see. "We can't stay here," Eli shouted, panic burgeoning. "We have to move, now." Fueled by instinct, he grabbed Beth's hand and, along with Jake, led them toward the narrow passage. The air thickened with fear as they pushed forward, only to hear the beast tearing through the cave entrance. The whispers returned, rushing through the air, a chorus of voices rising with anger and hunger. Eli urged them on, adrenaline coursing through him as the shadows pursued with ferocity. Escape was the only thought in his mind. The light ahead promised a way out, but the creature's snarl reminded him that safety was still a distant fantasy. Would they find salvation at the end of the tunnel, or would the darkness catch them, ensnaring their very souls in its wretched grasp? They dashed forward, hearts pounding, all too aware that the worst was far from over. Eli's feet pounded against the cold ground, the narrow passageway barely wide enough for their hurried escape. The flickering light pursued them, a living thing that fought to stay alive against the suffocating darkness pressing in from all sides. The walls seemed to close in, the rough stone scraping Eli's trembling arms as he shoved forward, dragging Beth and Jake behind him. "Keep moving," he shouted, fear pushing him into a frantic pace. "We can't look back." Beneath the earth's surface, the roar of the creature grew louder, increasing in rage as the sounds of their escape echoed in the claustrophobic tunnel. Each footfall felt like a countdown, the beast counting down the moments until it could devour them. Eli could almost feel its hot breath on his neck, and each time he glanced back, the shadows shifted in ways that only deepened his dread. Suddenly, the passage took a sharp turn, leading them into another small cavern flooded with a dim shimmer. Eli skidded to a halt, heart pounding painfully against his ribcage as he took in the sight before him. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and at the opposite end lay a gnarled tree that seemed to grow straight from the stone, its roots weaving a web across the floor. "What now?" Jake gasped, eyes darting around the room. Eli stepped forward cautiously, his instincts screaming at him. The light he had brought flickered violently as if warning him of the danger that lay ahead. "We need to regroup and think," he muttered, scanning the walls for more of those markings. The drawings around the tree were even more frantic, hands reaching out, faces twisted in agony. Beth swayed unsteadily before settling against the tree's trunk, drawing a shaky breath. "I don't think it can follow us in here," she whispered. But Eli could see the doubt painted across her face. Straining to listen, they all felt the echoes of their pursuer still lingering just outside, teasing them with the promise of despair. "Maybe we can find something to defend ourselves with," Eli suggested, eyes flicking over the remains of the cave. As he moved toward the tree, he noticed strange symbols carved into its bark. Beneath the markings, the ground was littered with scraps, rusted tools, broken rocks, remnants of belongings long forgotten. Each object seemed to hold stories of those who had come before, each whispering their fate in hushed tones. "Think we're not the first ones down here?" Jake muttered, picking up a jagged piece of metal that glinted ominously in the flickering light. Eli nodded, a chill gripping his spine. "We're definitely not alone," he murmured, sweeping his gaze back toward the passage they had emerged from. Movement louder than a whisper, unmistakably deliberate. The beast was still out there, lurking, waiting. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the cavern that froze Eli in place. It was a distinct click, like claws scraping against rock, a warning, or a signal that the creature had found its prey. All at once, the shadows morphed into form at the tunnel's mouth. A hulking figure loomed, grotesque and monstrous, its eyes like fireflies blinking in the darkness. The whispers ramped up, a menacing chorus that pulsed with life. Eli's heart raced, fear surging as he backed away from the tree. "We need to go now." He could hardly think. Instinct took over, a primal urge to survive. But as he moved, he realized the others weren't following. He turned back, breath hitching at the sight before him. Beth was trembling, staring directly at the beast with wide, terrified eyes. "Eli, it wants something," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean?" Eli's voice cracked. The shadows seemed to weave around them, tightening their grip. The creature edged closer, showing jagged teeth that glistened with menace. Eli found himself locked in place, torn between fighting and fleeing. As the distance closed, something unexpected happened. The beast paused, tilting its head as if weighing its next move. Eli felt the pressure build within him, needing to act, needing to know. "What do you want?" he shouted. Desperation rising, but instead of a response, the creature merely regarded him with a spark of intelligence that felt unnervingly human. And then, in a shocking instant, it roared again, this time louder, shaking the very ground beneath them. In that deafening moment, an explosion of sound, air, and fury filled the cavern, leaving Eli gasping. Breathless and terrified, he realized that not only was their survival now at stake, but maybe also their very understanding of what they were facing. What power did this creature hold, and would Eli find a way to unravel the truth behind its chilling gaze before it was too late? The roar echoed in Eli's ears, a bone-rattling sound that reverberated through the cavern like thunder. It was enough to shake him from his paralysis. "Run!" he yelled, this time grasping Beth's arm, yanking her toward the opposite side of the chamber. Jake followed closely, the jagged piece of metal clutched tightly in his hand, but Beth didn't move. Her gaze remained locked on the creature, her chest rising and falling with frantic breaths. "Eli, wait! It's not attacking us!" she cried, fear mixed with a kind of bewildered fascination. "Are you insane? That thing is the embodiment of nightmares!" Eli shouted, tugging harder on her arm. He felt an urgent instinct to protect, but it clashed violently with the need to escape. Jake, looking back and forth between them, shouted, "Just listen. Maybe it wants something from us." Eli felt a surge of hatred toward the beast, mixed with something else he couldn't quite place, a strange connection, a palpable energy. The creature's eyes flickered, almost pleading, pulling Eli deeper into its gaze. "Whatever it is, we can't give it what it wants," Eli argued, his voice growing frantic. As they hesitated, the creature edged closer, its breath creating a low rumble, echoing in the vastness of the chamber. "We can't stay here. We need to move." Then, Beth finally broke free of her trance. A sudden flicker of understanding crossed her face. "Eli, wait. Look at the tree, those symbols, they might be a way to. Don't try to reason with it." Eli hissed, but there was a nagging doubt in his mind. "No, listen." Beth cut in, determination lining her features. She pointed to the tree's base, where intricate carvings spiraled around the roots. "What if it needs something from us to protect us, or to let us go? What if those drawings are a plea for understanding? The creature paused, lowering its head slowly. Eli could hardly believe what he was seeing or feeling. A wavering warmth enveloped him as he stared into the creature's eyes. They were not wild with rage, but reflective, as if holding centuries of sorrow. "Those markings, they tell a story," Jake said, stepping apprehensively closer to the tree. Eli glanced at him, surprised that he was gearing up for understanding instead of escape. "We should read them." "Are you insane?" Eli said again, panic rising. The imminent threat still loomed overhead, and now they were veering into some esoteric nonsense. "It could be a key, Eli," Beth insisted, urging him to reconsider. "What if this is our only chance?" The roars from deeper within the cave felt closer now, and Eli knew they couldn't remain in this limbo. Time was running out. With a grimace, he nodded, unwilling but resigned. "Fine. But we keep an eye on that thing." They stepped toward the tree, its bark rough and ancient beneath their fingers. Eli's pulse raced as he traced the symbols, intricate lines creating a map of despair, exact details etched in hard relief. Suddenly, the cavern shook as another roar exploded through the air, a retaliation from the bowels of the cave. The walls trembled, dust cascading from the ceiling, and the beast reacted, agitated, stepping back but never breaking its gaze from Eli and the others. That he could feel an overwhelming sense of urgency, a deep-rooted instinct barking at him to move, to flee. "We don't have much time," Eli whispered, eyes darting nervously. "If there is something we can do, we need to do it fast." Another sound reverberated from the shadows beyond, a low growl mixed with the thrumming urgency of the cave itself. It was a challenge, a reminder that their time was dwindling. The monster outside, their ultimate predator, was inching closer, hungry and relentless. As the markings began to glow with a faint light, Eli felt the ground beneath shift, creating an otherworldly tension in the air. What if what they sought was not merely a way out but a way to confront this creature, reshape their fate? "What is this place?" Eli gasped, heart hammering. "Maybe it's not just a cave," Jake replied, voice trembling with uncertainty. "Maybe it's something more. With the walls closing in and the creature waiting expectantly, Eli knew one thing. They had to find out the truth, not just for their survival, but for the lives of those who had come before them. And just then, a flash of light illuminated the cavern, revealing something hidden deep within the tree's roots. A glimmer of hope or a harbinger of doom, Elliot couldn't tell. "Quick!" he pressed, but all he could think was that whatever it was would either save them or seal their fate forever. As they leaned closer, a haunting realization crept over him. They were running out of time and answers were just beyond their reach. The light pulsated with an unnatural rhythm, casting eerie shadows that danced against the cavern walls. Eli felt his breath hitch in his throat as the faint glow highlighted a circular object nestled among the tree's roots. It was obscured by darkness, but he could make out the outlines of a disk, flickering with an otherworldly sheen. "Is that?" Beth whispered, stepping closer, her fingers trembling as they reached for the light. "Careful!" Eli shouted, pulling her back just as the ground beneath them quaked again. Dust tumbled from above, nearly obscuring their view, and the beast let out a ferocious growl, its head darting toward the new threat. They had no choice. The urgency of the situation pressed down on them, suffocating. Eli urged them forward, dread layering over hope with every step. They knelt, eyes glued to the object, a large round disc mesmerizing with glyphs similar to those etched in the tree. "What if it's some kind of key?" Jake suggested, his voice barely above a whisper as he peered into the light. "Maybe if we activate it, we can control whatever that is." "Control it?" Eli scoffed, though doubt tugged at him. The images of the creature trembled in his mind, a haunting presence he couldn't shake off. Still, defiance burned within him. "We're in no position to control anything." Just then, an ear-splitting roar ripped through the cavern again, more ferocious than before. It was a warning, a challenge echoing off the granite walls. Eli's heart raced. That sound wasn't just an acknowledgement of their presence, it was a promise of destruction if they stayed put. "Do it!" Beth shouted, urgency crackling in her voice. "We have to try." With a trembling hand, she reached out again, brushing the surface of the shimmering disk. Instantly, the cavern brightened, filled with an incandescent glow. The symbols around them pulsed as if breathing, and the air thickened, vibrating with raw energy. Eli's instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't look away. The disk warmed beneath their touch, and for a moment, everything fell silent. The creature watched, its expression inscrutable but almost curious, as though sensing the threads of fate coiling tighter around them. "What happens if it doesn't work?" Eli questioned, heart racing in tandem with the frantic rhythm of the world around them. "Then we die trying," Beth replied, determination fiercer than fear dancing in her eyes. A low growl rumbled from deep within the cavern as if the shadows were alive, ready to swallow them whole. In that moment, Eli made a choice. "I'll do it." He pressed his palm against the disk, feeling the warmth seep into his skin, a surge of power coursing through him. The intensity of it nearly knocked him off his feet. The cavern filled with a blinding light, engulfing everything. For a heartbeat, it felt like they were suspended in the void, caught between worlds. The growl morphed into a howl, a sound of agony, reverberating through the air, and then, in an explosive heartbeat, the light and sound collided, throwing everything into chaos. Eli's world spun wildly around him. The walls shimmered and warped as if the fabric of reality was tearing apart. In that instant, he locked eyes with the creature, the depth of its gaze reaching inside of him, and he felt the truth crashing down like a tidal wave. "We're not just in any cave," he gasped, the realization piercing through the chaos. "We're connected to this." The disk flared brighter, the energy crackling, with each passing moment feeling like the edge of an impending storm. Before he could contemplate what lay ahead, a blinding surge of light erupted from the tree, enveloping all three of them in its heart-stopping glow. Eli was thrown backward, slamming against the cavern wall, time slowed to a crawl as shadows writhed around them, pulling at each other. Eli strained to rise, heart pounding harder than the roar of the creature. The last thing he glimpsed was the creature, the entity that, in a moment of both fear and kinship, seemed to tremble at the realization of what was coming. When he finally pushed himself upright, shaking dust and confusion off, the disk was gone. "Eli!" Beth's voice broke through the haze. "What happened?" I don't know." He stammered. But he felt it, the weight of knowledge, unfinished. From the far reaches, the growl morphed into a guttural sound that sent chills down his spine. They hadn't escaped yet. Eli glanced deeper into the shadows. Something else was stirring. A new challenge awaited them, something that could change everything they thought they knew. "Get ready," he said, clenching his fists. "We're not done yet." Even as he felt uncertainty coiling in his gut, he knew it was a fight for their lives and perhaps something deeper. With every heartbeat, the stakes climbed higher. What had the disk revealed? And what awaited them in the darkness? Eli's knees sank into the cold, damp earth as he steadied himself, still reeling from the explosion of light. The soft glow of the cavern had dimmed, yet a lingering pulse of energy swirled in the air, offering a hint of hope amid the dread. "Is everyone okay?" He turned to Beth and Jake, their faces reflecting a cocktail of anxiety and bewilderment. "I think so," Beth replied, voice shaky. She brushed dirt away from her arms, eyes darting around the cavern's edges, where shadows crept closer. "But what just happened?" Eli could feel the thrum of fear as a new growl sounded deep in the tunnel. They were not alone. "That thing is still out there," he said, heart pounding against his ribs. "We need to regroup. We have to find a way out of here." "No kidding," Jake replied, gripping the jagged piece of metal tightly. His knuckles had turned white. "It's still hunting us." This time, Eli's resolve crystallized. They needed answers, but what about the beast? Did they truly understand it? As they gathered in a tight circle, the haunting growl echoed through the cave, vibrating through their bones. This wasn't just about escape anymore, it was about survival against a terror shrouded in mystery. "Look over there." Jake pointed, and they turned to see the eerie glow emanating from the gnarled tree across the cavern. The symbols carved into it pulsed faintly, vibrating in an alluring rhythm. Each mark seemed to promise answers but also responsibility. I think Beth's eyes widened. "I think it's trying to communicate." Eli nodded, dread mixing with a rising curiosity. "This place could be the key to understanding what we're facing. These symbols, they might be a history, a warning." "I felt a connection," Jake said quietly, stepping closer to the tree. "Maybe it means we have to share something." Eli felt the weight of their terrifying predicament. He remembered the creature's gaze, the flicker of something more than a predatory hunger, an intelligence veiled in darkness. They had stumbled into something bigger than themselves, something that could reshape their fate. "All right," Eli took a deep breath. "What if we dig deeper into those symbols? Maybe we can find a clue, something that can help us." The three of them stepped closer, running fingers along the ancient bark, tracing the patterns. The symbols began to glow warmly beneath their touch, a surge of energy coursing through Eli. And then it clicked. "It's not just about escape," he murmured. "It's also a plea. A bond. The creature, it's not just a monster, it's trapped too. It feeds on fear as a way to survive this place, just like us." Beth leaned in, her voice trembling. "If it needs something, we should try to understand," but the shadows roared back, louder this time. That menacing growl tore through Eli's thoughts, as if the creature were mocking them. "We don't have much time. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast." In an impulsive move, Eli stepped to the tree, feeling a surge of adrenaline. He could almost sense the creature behind them, looming, waiting. Let us speak to the tree, to the symbols, offer whatever it needs in exchange for passage. "Eli, I don't know if that's wise," Beth said, glancing back nervously. Eli took her hands in his. "Whatever darkness it represents doesn't have to be our fate. We can change that by showing empathy, by linking ourselves to the story. It's time to reclaim our truth." Eli locked eyes with Beth and Jake, determination solidifying into resolve. They placed their hands on the symbols together, channeling their energy, their fears, their very essence into the glowing markings. The cavern trembled as light built from their fingers and enveloped the tree's soft whirls of illumination caught and dispersed the shadows. A silence engulfed them, thick yet tender, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to their will. And in that moment of silence, a new voice rose from within, softer yet louder than the creature's growl. "Trust," it whispered, a word woven through the depths of their souls, and suddenly the shadows recoiled. The creature paused just beyond the edges of the cavern, glinting eyes softened for a breath. "I think," Eli started, faltering as he felt the ground shake again, this time not in anger, but in an acknowledgement of balance struck. "It's feeling something, hope." Jake breathed in, amazed. "We're showing it their way, that it doesn't have to feed on fear anymore. But what if this doesn't work? What if it does attack?" Beth gasped, her voice laced with uncertainty. Eli squeezed her shoulder, keeping his gaze on the creature, which stepped hesitantly closer, drawn into the light. "We have to believe. This is our only shot." The creature halted, towering but no longer vicious. Something flickered in its gaze that looked almost human. It wanted release, not destruction. "Together," Eli urged, pushing his energy into the symbols again. "Let us free us all." The air thickened, the weight of ancient tales surging through the cavern, erupting into vivid colors and brilliant light. The tree began to glow brighter, shining in response to their unified hope. With a thunderous roar, the creature unleashed its own sound, one that was no longer of rage, but of sorrow, transforming as the bond grew, thickening the threads connecting them. It flicked its gleaming eyes toward Eli, perhaps seeking forgiveness, or yearning for clarity. It was a mutual understanding, a sense of redemption for both human and beast. With a final surge, shadows surrendered to the encroaching light as the creature roared once more, its own echo shifting into relief. And then silence fell, the creature melted into the glowing brilliance, the darkness retreating like a tide, unveiling the way back to the light. Eli and the others stood breathless as the transformative essence began to fade away, the cave they had once feared revealing an exit bathed in dawn's first light. Did it work? Are we free? Beth whispered awestruck. We did it together, Eli said, their eyes reflecting the dawn outside, to the world waiting beyond that in triumph. They stepped through the cave's mouth, the sun shining brightly, illuminating not only their path but also their lives ahead, now forever changed by the deeper connection they had forged that night. They defaced the terror together, and from the shadows, a brighter dawn had emerged, a new beginning forged by truth and trust. Eli took a deep breath, the weight of the night lifting as they took their first steps toward the world that welcomed them. Let us never forget what we did, he vowed. Let us remember the power of understanding and unite whenever darkness calls. As they walked into the warmth of a new day, they knew one thing for sure: they had transcended the shadows, uncovering the truth of their courage amidst the night's whispers. Now, their tale was about to begin again. But before you jump to conclusions or leave this tale behind, let us make sure you don't miss what comes next. You need to subscribe now to catch every exclusive story we tell. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Tell me in the comments what your favorite part was. Flood that section with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what keeps our community thriving.